Welcome, everyone. I'm Jeff Libby, CEO and founder of TableTap. I'm sitting here with Tucker Criswell.
Hey guys, my name's Tucker, sales director at TableTap. So if you were to ever reach out to us, inquire about any of our products, I'd probably be the guy you're talking to. But super excited to present to you guys today, just on TableTap, the self pour movement, how and why it came to be. I know Jeff's going to send out some thanks, but I would just like to thank Andrew and the whole CBP team for allowing us to speak today.
Yeah, thanks, craft beer professionals, for everything. We've been a part of Craft Beer Professionals Group for a long time. I joined in the early days of Craft Beer Professionals, and it's been amazing to see the growth. Props to Andrew and his team for creating a great community where everyone can kind of come together and collaborate in our industry. Tabletap is the original pioneer of self pour. We brought self pour beer to the United States in 2006. We've been a part of Craft Beer Professionals since the beginning. We're now proud to say we're an industry ally. And for a lot of reasons, we feel that this strategic partnership aligns with our mission and our goal as a company, which is to do a service for craft beer drinkers all over the world and allow them to taste as many beverages as possible. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the self-pour movement and how and why it came to be. So after college, I lived in South America for 2 years. While down there, I was working for a wine exporter in Argentina. I came across my first self-pour beer tap at a table. It was just a tap mounted at the table where you could dispense your own beer and it would count how many liters were coming out the tap. There was no controls or anything of the sort on the tap. But I immediately fell in love with that feeling of empowerment you get from being able to pour your own beverages. It became my mission to then take that concept and immediately recognizing the value and that feeling that it gives you, and knowing the restaurant and beer industry here in the United States, I felt that being the freest country in the world, why could we not pour our own beverages in the U.S.? So that inspired me to do some preliminary investigation into the law. I've always been one to challenge authority and challenge the laws. So I guess it's kind of fitting that I started the self-pour movement with TableTap. And there's essentially 3 laws to be mindful of for self-pour. One is you obviously can't serve a minor, so underage consumption. Every state has different laws as they relate to, alcohol and pouring your own beverages at the same time. The 3 laws to be mindful of are underage consumption, overconsumption, and no alcohol sales by vending machine. Each state has similar laws that address each of these 3 issues. And so we get around them with our self-pour system, and we've designed a system to be in compliance with the laws in the United States by essentially making sure that we, comply with the underage consumption laws. So you can't actually pour your own beverages before your ID is checked. You also can't pour your own beverages until you've been evaluated and someone has assessed your sobriety. There are regular dispense limit thresholds that you would reach as a consumer pouring your own beverages that would require you to see a staff member who would then essentially reassess your sobriety and determine whether they should allow you to continue drinking or not. Most states say that 2 drinks is a reasonable quantity of alcohol to make available to any one person at one time. Essentially, we've designed our system to cut people off every 2 drinks. So whether that's beer, That would be 2 16-ounce pints, so 32 ounces of beer. We can also put a consumption multiplier on the taps. For example, if you had a non-alcoholic tap that did not need a consumption limit, we could disable the consumption limit for that specific tap so that there would be unlimited pours off of a non-alcoholic tap. We can increase the consumption multiplier for taps that have wine and spirits, and cocktails, seltzers, and other type of beverages that may have a different or higher alcohol by volume. And then, of course, each state, you don't see vending machines with beer inside them for a reason. It's because each state has a law that says that you can't sell alcohol through a vending machine. Typically, vending machine, coin operated machine, or similar machine. So that's why we use RFID cards. So customers are usually tying their credit card to an RFID card that they will use to go sample different beverages, and then they can just pay for what they pour when they're finished with their experience. We could also do prepaid cards, what's like a gift card, and you put $100 on the RFID card, and as you pour, your balance is decreasing. So essentially, we designed the first ever self-pour system that would comply with United States laws. I went around the country meeting with different alcohol departments. We're located and headquartered here in Atlanta, Georgia. So the Georgia Department of Revenue was the first alcohol authority that we met with. At the time, I was working for Budweiser, and brought in a huge, gigantic beer tube that had 180 ounces worth of beer inside of it, similar to a pitcher, although this was much larger. And I sat it on the conference table in the alcohol department and said, if you can if you can put this on a table and allow people to pour off of this gigantic beer tube, why not just let them pour off of a tap and limit the amount that can be dispensed out of that tap? And then we, went back and forth with the alcohol department. They eventually approved the system, and we launched the first ever self-pour system in the United States at Stats Sports Bar in downtown Atlanta, which was a bunch of different tables with taps on them. While that was an awesome system and still is an existing customer to date, we found that when craft beer boomed in 2008, Stats was created in 2006. So we launched in 2006, the first ever self-pour system. And then in 2008, the craft beer boom really happened in this country, and people started to want and demand a wider variety of beverages on tap than just the ones that were available at their table. So that inspired us to create what's now called the tap wall. So the original system, the RFID cards were held by the staff member, and the staff member would activate the table using a green RFID card and deactivate the table with a red RFID card. And so we thought, why not just give these RFID cards to the customer and allow them to pour their own beverages and track them out dispensed, for each individual customer, and create a communal area of taps where people can pour their own beverages from a tap wall and try a wide variety of beverages on tap. So our ultimate goal is to allow craft beer drinkers to taste as many beverages as possible. And the tap wall certainly does align with our mission. We created and launched the first ever tap wall at Public House in downtown Chicago in 2010. The first tap wall, just to be honest, didn't work very well. They even took it out after a couple years because it just didn't really perform. We did a lot of R&D and partnered with some developers and created the best self-pour system available on the market today. And it utilizes and harnesses the power of Apple screens. It's an iOS-based platform that has Retina screens, really great graphics for the customers to interact and engage with the screens, learn about the beverages. It's a very beer educational system where if you touch the logo of the beverage, you can learn about what's on tap. So we're all about educating the customer and migrating those macro beer drinkers to become essentially micro beer drinkers and supporting, local breweries. And so essentially that's how the tap wall came to be. And so I'll let you take it from here.
Yeah. So while the craft beer boom did have a big impact on self-pour, so did the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic was a terrible time period for the world, but it did accelerate the adoption of self-pour. That's because it helped alleviate many problems that operators were really struggling with during that time. During the heat of the pandemic, 78% of restaurant operators reported not having enough staff needed to service their current demand. And today, employment numbers still haven't reached pre-pandemic numbers in the bar and hospitality industry. The cost of labor continues to increase. So naturally, operators have looked for more effective ways to operate on a lean staff. That was critically important during COVID. If needed, a self-pour tap room can be operated with only one staff member.
Yeah, so it was amazing when, COVID happened. I as the founder of Tabletap, I was obviously worried about the livelihood of Tabletap and the business in general. And, it was just amazing to see the overwhelmingly positive response that people had to taking control and pouring their own beverages themselves and really embracing the technology. That was kind of counterintuitive for me, but it ended up being a blessing in disguise, I think, for self-pour.
Yeah, social distancing was another huge emphasis during the pandemic. Through self-pour, the number of touch points between the customer and a member of staff can be significantly reduced if needed. Only one interaction is required, and that's when a staff member checks a customer's ID upon entry and issues them an RFID card, which Jeff touched on. From there, the checkout process can be completely contactless, as the customer can just drop their RFID card in a bucket on the way out. We've also developed our own in-house POS system. And with that POS system, we've developed an option called Order Tab, which is a QR code ordering platform where customers can scan a QR code and order a food item and other items directly from their phone. So again, further minimizing touch points between customer and staff if needed. Self-pour also increases speed of service and the number of people that can be served at one time. So naturally, this reduces large crowds or lines forming behind a bar. Again, social distancing, super important during the pandemic and is still important today. And then since the pandemic, we've seen that people naturally gravitate towards self-service options. And that's across industries, whether that's taps at bars, checkout kiosks at grocery stores, or check-in kiosks at airports. We recently did a case study on BC Brewery in Hunt Valley, Maryland. They're one of our customers. Their owner, Rich Mack, originally had 24 taps behind a traditional bar and 24 tap self-pour wall. He said that when he had both options available at the start of his business, 99% of his sales came from that self-pour tap wall. And he didn't do anything to promote the two bars any differently. He said it was just a natural gravitation towards the self-pour taps, which actually led him to convert all of his beer taps in his venue to completely self-pour. 77% of consumers believe valuing their time with self-service is the best way to provide a good experience. This is because self-service is quicker service and people value instant gratification and convenience now more than they ever have. Before we go any further, Jeff did a great job of touching on, how our tap wall product works, but just want to show you guys a quick video that we've created. This small video is part of a larger YouTube video that breaks down, goes into more detail around our technology and these mobile tap trailers, which are really cool. So the link to this video, the full video, should drop in the show notes in the comments, along with our contact information too. But I'll go ahead and play the video and we'll be back in a sec.
This is a 16 tap wall with 2 taps for every iPad mini and card reader. The iPad minis display the different brands of beverages on tap and correlate to the taps below the screens. iPad minis are also interactive for the guests to touch the logo of the beverage on tap to learn more about each beverage, flavor profiles, as well as other pertinent descriptive information about each brand on tap. Once the customer is ready to pour, they can simply insert their RFID card in the slot above the tap, which will trigger ounce counters to be presented on the screen, indicating the tap is ready to pour. To pour, tilt the glass at a 45 and open that tap all the way up. During a pour, customers can see on screen how much they're pouring by the ounce and how their tab is being affected, including a full pour history. This is
All right. And then so the next part of our discussion presentation today, as Jeff mentioned, we've been members of Craft Beer Professionals group for a long time now. So we've seen a lot of different posts, a lot of different interactions. We know that brewery owners, taproom owners do have some opinions on self-pour. So we just want to kind of review some of the common misconceptions we see come in about self-pour, and then hopefully debunk some of those misconceptions. Do you want to add anything before we get into it?
No, that sounds good.
Good deal.
Let's get right into it. Yeah, so we've seen self-pour take off in the restaurant, fast casual, hotels. There's a lot of different markets for self-pour. When I first created the company, I think most people thought it was just a fad or a trend and it would be gone by now. That was these 18 years ago. And I think it's evident to everyone now that self-pour is here to stay. It's not for everyone, but certainly has a lot of value in a lot of different scenarios. I naturally thought that breweries would be some of the biggest benefactors of self-pour due to the fact they probably sell the most beer, and I mean their whole business is beer centric. Now we're seeing all sorts of beverages through these taps, and obviously breweries are changing as well. But it didn't really catch fire like I thought it would, and I think there's some common misconceptions and some myths about self-pour that need to be debunked for us to really make some headway in this market and do a service and really, complete our mission, which is do a service for craft beer drinkers across the country and allow them to taste as many beverages as possible.
Yeah. And one assumption that a lot of people have is that self-pour is only for draft beer. But we're seeing that people are wanting to pour so many other types of beverages themselves as well. Our systems can dispense any beverage that comes in a keg. Wine, cocktails, ciders on tap are becoming super popular menu options at tap rooms. There's also been a 500% increase in non-alcoholic draft beverages since 2015. These include non-alcoholic beers and cocktails, cold brew coffee, kombucha, and craft sodas and craft lemonades. What we're seeing is that operators have to be able to adapt to ever-changing customer preferences. 62% of American men list beer as a preferred alcoholic beverage, compared to only 19% of female drinkers. We saw this in our case study with BC Brewery. A lot of their customers are couples just coming in for a few drinks, some food, maybe a small meal, appetizers. Their owner, Rich, says that almost always one person out of that couple, usually it's the wife or girlfriend, inquires about a non-beer option. And then according to a study done by Secret Hopper, who I know worked closely with CBP, only 25% of brewery and taproom customers classify themselves as beer nerds. That means you have to have a variety of menu options, but that also means people are valuing other things like the experiences you provide on top of the beverages that you provide.
Yeah, I know when my wife and I are looking for a brewery, it's always difficult because she doesn't drink beer. So we're very thankful for breweries, or I am at least, and I think she would say the same, that offer vodkas or different cocktails on tap, so we can keep everybody happy. But yeah, certainly something like a tap wall would be experientially unparalleled by any other type of technology I can think of in a tap room.
Yeah, and the ability of BC Brewery to adapt to both consumer preference and consumer experience preference was one of the most realizations that they made. They realized that a huge portion of their customers were wanting non-beer options, and they also realized almost all of their customers preferred the self-pour experience. So not only did they adapt by adding more self-pour taps, they also added more variety to their menu. We've seen that operators that are open to versifying their menu are also open to versifying their customer experience. Because of this, the growth of non-beer options on tap has accelerated the growth of self-pour. And I think you can probably agree with this too. When the company was started back in 2006, we probably didn't predict this. I think we're doing more and more systems for non-beer taps than we ever thought we would do.
Absolutely.
But we do realize that's important for us. It's a big part of the industry, a big part of our business. And if we didn't make that realization, we'd be behind the curve for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only us, but, I think that a lot of the breweries that you see out there today are morphing the way they do business as well. I've got a couple of friends that own breweries and operate them, and there seem to all be going off on another tangent, creating liqueurs and seltzers and lots of different types of beverages. But yes, we're seeing a lot of different beverages on tap. But the core of Table Tap was founded to really, satisfy craft beer drinkers.
Yeah, and we're craft beer drinkers too. So
yeah,
it's been an adjustment for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. But exciting stuff. It's just a bigger market than we anticipated. So that's all good. So another common misconception with self-pour is that it takes away from the customer staff interaction. And I believe this is probably one of the biggest ones for the brewery industry. And brewers, from what I've heard, the feedback that I've gotten, really value the experience and the interaction between their staff members and their customers. And people go to the brewery to talk to the people that work at the brewery. And I 100% agree. And I in no way intended or think that self-pour detracts from that relationship. I actually think that self-pour enhances the relationship between the customer and the staff, and allows the staff to stop worrying about filling up people's beverages and being able to maybe float on the floor, talk to people, make sure they're having a good experience, tell them about the beer, educate them about the brewery, give them a little history about the brewery, and not have to worry about being behind the bar and operating taps themselves. So I think it actually frees up the staff's time to engage with the guest on the floor. So I completely disagree that self-pour detracts from customer staff interaction. I think that it's actually the opposite. When I was pitching alcohol departments on self-pour and it maintaining, responsible drinking standards, I always said that if I was usually up against a panel or a board of alcohol authorities, and they were very close-minded about self-pour. They did not like the idea. And I always thought that if I can convince them that self-pour actually enhanced visibility and gives you more control over what people are drinking, then I had won the battle. And that ultimately I would receive a favorable opinion letter from that alcohol department for that state, so that I'd be able to market and sell self-pour technology. And my goal, being in this group and forming the partnership with craft beer professionals, is to debunk all these myths and misconceptions about self-pour, and hopefully enlighten some folks who might, turn to self-pour for some business solutions in the future. A lot of tap rooms implement what's called a tap ambassador, put them on the floor. These are staff members that come out from behind the bar and peruse the tap wall. I always recommend that you have a tap ambassador on the floor during peak hours and peak days of operation. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights, even Sundays, tap ambassador on the floor, helping customers, teach them how to pour a beer, because most people don't know how to pour a beer. Obviously, you can have signage that helps people learn how to pour a beer, but having a staff member helping them pour a beer maybe someone walks up and says, hey, you know, I really just like Bud Light. What do you got like that? And that tap ambassador can then lead them to a bunch of Pilsners that might have the same type of flavor profiles, and they might open up to, you know, microbrews. And that's what it's all about. Changing consumer behavior doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I've been at it for 18 years, and I've still got a lot of work. We've still got a lot of work to do. But I think we're taking steps in the right direction with our partnership in this group, and hopefully some people find this insightful and useful, and understand that self-pour actually encourages interaction between the staff and the guests, and frees the staff up to help the guests. So instead of having their back turned to the customer pouring beers, they're face to face with the customers. They're answering questions they may have. And just like a bartender would, their job is to help customers in any way and assist in finding the perfect beer for them.
Yeah,
So,
and a couple of things to add to that is I think we can all agree that when a customer comes in, they need to be greeted with a warm, immediate introduction. And with a self-pour system, exactly that happens, because as soon as a customer comes in, they see a host or a hostess who can warmly greet them, check their ID, issue them an RFID card, educate them on how the concept works. So right then and there, again, there's an immediate introduction. The customer feels welcome. And going back to that secret hopper study, people spend 25% more when they're greeted when they walk in. It sounds simple, but it's something that can be easily implemented and is always implemented with the self-pour system. I also think it's important to realize, we kind of touched on this when we're talking about, beer drinkers versus non-beer drinkers, but it's important to realize that not every one of your customers is the same. Your younger generations, your millennials and your Gen Zers, those are going to be your biggest customer base. And we do know that those generations are much more introverted. 41% of them experience menu anxiety. So for those people, they might just want to walk in. They might really enjoy that warm introduction. But after that, to be completely honest, they might just want to walk up to the tap wall, pour a beer, and sit down. Now, your older generations, they might want that warm introduction. They might want to chat up that and tap ambassador for much longer. The cool thing about self-pour is that it gives your customers the freedom to choose their own experience. If they don't want a whole lot of interaction, they don't have to interact with the staff. They can quickly pour their own beer. But for those that do come in looking for that meaningful relationship with staff, they can 100% get that. And Table Tap facilitates that more, as Jeff touched on, than a traditional bar would, because of those tap ambassadors being pulled out from behind the bar and interacting face to face right next to their customers by the tap wall.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of times you walk into a brewery and you find somebody, as an avid craft beer drinker, just asking what I would consider novel questions about the beer and about the brewery that I already know. And he's sucking that bartender's time. And all I want to do is get the beer that I want, because I know what I want. I've already tried all of their standard beers, but they have a new release or a new feature that I want. I want to go right to it, and I want to get it. And I listen to the spiel again, which is good, because I appreciate, the history and behind the beers and the story. But, a lot of people already know what they want. So just, get them a drink, put the drink in their hand. And, I think, you could complement your bar and have a bartender behind the bar if you wanted to, and also have a tap wall, so that people can just walk up. Those people that know what they're doing and know what they want, they can just go get the beverages themselves. All right. So another common misconception with self-pour is that customers can't pour a good beer, and that self-pour systems can't pour a good beer. So obviously, a self-pour draft system is slightly different than your regular draft system. You'll want that pour to be slightly slower for an amateur pourer, and you'll want to make some adjustments to the system and making sure that beer is coming out ice cold. They're using the proper glassware, which you can have, cases of different types of glassware labeled for the different types and styles of beers and beverages that are on tap. we do a lot of consulting on the draft systems that our technology goes onto. One of the unique things about TableTap as a company, as a self-pour company, is we also do draft systems. So, I worked for Budweiser for a number of years before I started TableTap. I've also brought a guy over with me who basically taught me everything I know about draft systems, and is the best teacher of draft systems could possibly ask for, who's educated me and allowed me to educate my team on how to install a proper draft system and how to adapt it for self-pour, making sure that to minimize foam and to educate ultimately the operators on how to educate the customers on how to pour good beer, which is, obviously don't touch the glass to the faucet because that's gross. Hold the glass at a 45-degree angle and open the tap all the way. I would say the biggest mistake people make that don't know how to pour a beer is they just try to open the tap halfway, for which we have solutions. We encourage our customers to put instructions up on how to pour a beer. We encourage them to have tap ambassadors on the floor, helping people pour the first beer, maybe even pour the first beer for the customer and show them how to do it. And eventually they get it. I mean, let's be honest, pouring a beer is not rocket science. People can be taught how to pour a proper beer, and it doesn't take a long time. So people get it. And eventually, once you've poured your own and you've poured a little bit of foam and you've maybe thought you had to pay for foam, which you don't, and I'll get into that in a second, you probably will pour a better beer the second go round. We also use different types of faucets that can only fully open and fully close so that people can't halfway open the faucet. So like I said, unique thing about TableTap is we install a lot of the draft systems behind our technology ourselves. And if not, we're consulting with the draft beer installers to making sure that they design the system that would be optimal to receive our technology. Our flow meters only count liquid. So if you do get a full glass of foam, a lot of people don't know that a 16-ounce pint full of foam is going to eventually settle to 4 ounces of liquid beer. So 25% of foam settles to beer. And our meters only measure liquid. So you would only be charged for 4 ounces if you did happen to pour a 16-ounce pint full of foam. And so we educate our customers on, proper glassware, on how to design their draft systems, and how to greet their customers and how to engage with their customers on the floor and teach them how to pour proper beverages.
Yeah, and the only thing I can add to that is people do really enjoy, and it's part of the reason why you started TableTap, is just that feeling you got by pouring your own beer and pulling that tap handle. For a lot of people, it's something they've never done before. And to be able to do that for the first time, they love it and they want to do it again, and it keeps them coming back. So it's just that Absolutely. Feeling of empowerment that they do get. And we always try to preserve that feeling too. That's why we don't have any of the fill from the bottom, the push to pour. They are pulling that tap handle because that's super, super important.
Yeah, that was important to preserve the traditional beer faucet for the customers to really feel empowered and be their own bartender, so to speak.
Another misconception that we often hear is that self-pour eliminates jobs and tips. TableTap, we're not at all anti-staff. We're not trying to eliminate jobs. Just like the customer should have the freedom to choose their own experience and level of interaction with the staff, an owner should have the freedom to choose how a self-pour system impacts their operations and labor. If an owner is trying to cut down on labor costs, then self-pour can allow them to operate on a more lean staff if that's their goal. Or self-pour can allow them to reorganize and use their employees more efficiently in other areas of their operation. If a brewery operates with 2 bartenders in a self-pour application, one may become the host or hostess who greets people at the door and checks them in. And then that other person may become a tap ambassador and or food runner. And people still leave tips on a self-pour system. The average tip is 17%. For venues that customers are getting a higher level of interaction with the staff, those tips are even higher. If a customer would like, they can see a member of staff when they're done drinking and manually close out their tab and leave a tip just like they would at a normal bar. For customers that walk out and drop their RFID card in a bucket, an automatic gratuity can be applied to all walkouts. Or they can drop their card in a designated tip jar. If you see this picture, this is an example of one of our customers at their exit. They have 4 different tip jars or designated tip buckets that the customer can leave their RFID card so that the proper tip is applied. As you can see, there's the 25% up top, 20%, the 15%. And of course, there is a 0% option, but nobody wants to be that guy who's seen bending over just to drop his card in the 0% tip jar.
Yeah, I feel like when I started Table Tap 18 years ago, you would never tip at a fast casual. You most likely wouldn't be expected to tip, at least at a fast casual restaurant. And it's becoming, to the point now where it's a little bit obnoxious in fast casual and in settings where there's not a lot of service. Well, people want a tip and expect a tip. Basically, you walk in anywhere, even if you're getting takeout food, the takeout counter wants a tip and people leave it. What we've seen is that people just leave a tip, for self-pour, and it's usually 20%. So, people don't get stiffed on tips. I would argue people get more tips because I think you can sell more beer and more beverages with a self-pour system than you could a traditional system. Because, how many corner case scenarios are there where you are considering maybe having another beer, but you can't find your server, or there's a line at the bar and you don't want to wait. Whereas if you had a tap wall, you could just walk right up and pour a couple extra ounces before you leave. I know that's happened to me many times, and I'm sure it increases, revenue.
Well, yeah, the best is like when I'm with my girlfriend, I drink way faster. So I'll order a beer, I'll finish it. She's halfway down. It's like, oh, I don't want to order another beer because we can never keep pace. With self-pour, I could easily go pour a little small sample to kind of level our estimated time of completion on those drinks. So
that's right. You're drinking faster than she is.
So instead of having to order a new beer, I probably wouldn't order another beer. I would just wait for her to finish. But if there was a self-pour wall nearby, I could easily go pour myself a few ounces just to catch back up to her, or allow her to catch up to me.
So I think just making beer available on demand at people's fingertips is going to increase consumption.
And that's a great segue into another common misconception, that self-pour systems can't produce an ROI. The average customer actually spends 33% more at a self-pour venue than a traditional venue, for all the reasons we kind of just talked about. But another reason is that customers are able to build their own flights. That's a key concept around any self-pour system, is that you can try many different beverages by the ounce. And going back to that Secret Hopper study, which we love, we think that was a great report that they produced. People spend 20% more when they start off with a flight of beer rather than starting off with a pint of one beer. And again, customers sample far more beers via self-pour system than they would at a traditional bar. Self-pour allows operators to monetize these samples rather than giving them away for free. Increased sales can also be contributed to the ease at which customers can get a second drink, which we kind of just hit on. It's been shown that taproom performance is significantly higher when customers receive their second drink in 0 to 3 minutes from the time they ask for it. With a self-pour model, you don't even have to ask for a second drink. As soon as you finish your first drink, you can go up and pour your second one. We've also had some of our customers recoup a big chunk of their investment by selling RFID cards as gift cards before they even open up the tap wall. And we're always happy to help any of our customers with coming up with ideas on how to promote or market a self-pour system.
We saw a place called the Bay Street Beer Garden in Charleston do a campaign pre-opening where you could purchase a beer card to try the first ever tap wall in downtown Charleston. And they generated over $40,000 worth of revenue before they even opened their doors, which paid for their entire self-pour system. So, it's exciting. It was a novelty at the time. Obviously, it was one of the first, but I still think self-pour is very novel. So it's an experience that if you're the first venue where a customer experiences the ability and really that feeling of empowerment that they get from pouring their own beverages, that feeling is going to resonate with that customer forever. And it's going to be a memorable experience that they're never going to forget. They're never going to forget that experience. They're never going to forget that brewery. They're never going to forget that beer that they poured. So I think it's special experience for people. And I think it can do a lot, to position your brand, from a marketing standpoint too, on the cutting edge of technology. We're not even talking about numbers here because you can't quantify, how many people are going to want to come to your venue just because you have a new exciting way for them to enjoy your beers. So a lot of the benefit of self pour, I think, is social and marketing. And just to go back, the fact that our goal is that the tap wall promotes socialization, right? So we want people if people are interacting and making friends inside your venue, they're going to stay longer. The tap wall is a perfect icebreaker for people. If I see, someone pouring off of a tap that I might be quasi interested in, I might ask them how they like the beer, what it tastes like, and then I might try it myself. And I'm going to definitely try more beverages by the ounce than I would by the pint. Obviously, I can't drink a pint of every single beer in the world, but I could walk up to a 24 tap wall and I could taste every single beer. While I'm there for 2 hours, I could taste every single beverage on that wall. And if I like one, I'll fill up a full pint. I never actually fill up a full pint until I'm sure that I love that beer. And if I decide that I love that beer, then I'll pour a little bit more because I like my beer to be ice cold. So even if I do find a beer that I love, I may not fill up all the way. I may just pour 4 or 5 ounces, drink those ice cold, and then top up with 4 or 5 more. And so it just allows you to do different things than you could traditionally.
Yeah. And we've also seen traditional bars are sometimes wasting up to 25% of every keg. And that's because they are giving away lots of free samples. There's some overpouring, some spills, and pilferage. No matter how much you love your bartenders, it is the cold, hard truth that they are giving away free drinks. With the self-pour system, waste is virtually eliminated, as every ounce that comes out of the taps is accounted for and paid for by the customer. If needed, there is the ability to credit customers to their RFID card if they spill or something like that. You can also still run promotions, discounts, happy hours through the tap wall as well.
Yeah, our tap walls allow you to do different price levels. You can schedule the hours of operation for the taps so that you can eliminate after hours pouring. Essentially, you can have a tap schedule that starts at different hours and different days of the week, can be whatever schedule you want. And you can also trigger different price levels at different times of the day to encourage more consumption.
Yeah. And then again, self-pour does present an opportunity to reduce labor costs and run on a much more lean staff. At BC Brewery, if all 48 of their taps were behind a bar, Rich has stated he'd need 4 bartenders during peak times. Whereas now he really just needs 1 employee. If he's not implementing any tap ambassadors, but he does like to do that as well. But if he is super bare boned, he can't operate all 48 taps just with 1 person issuing RFID cards to customers.
Another common myth is that self-pour systems aren't sanitary. We found that during COVID, people actually preferred to pour their own beverages. They didn't want other people even touching their glassware. So people loved self-pour during the COVID time because it allowed them to control their own experience and minimize, touch points of other people touching the glass. They could sanitize things themselves. A lot of people would come in with their own wipes, and you still can, sanitize your own glassware. You could sanitize the faucets. I think we've all walked into a neighborhood bar and seen the beer taps behind the bar being dirty, or there's maybe some crumbs around them, some residue. It's definitely a big turnoff, especially for us folks that actually run draft systems and operate draft systems and install draft systems and service them and support them. We know that it's extra important for us to have clean taps. And I think you'll see, if you've ever gone into a self-pour tap room, hopefully a table tap self-pour tap room, where the taps are immaculate. It becomes ever increasingly more important to clean and be able to see your reflection in every single tap on that wall, to make it inviting for people to come pour their own beverages. So sanitation and cleanliness becomes increasingly more important with self-pour, because customers are going to be more inclined to pour beverages off of a clean tap wall. It's kind of like, I think we were talking the other day, you mentioned an analogy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the self-pour taps, I mean, customers are, you're interacting them with, you're touching, you're up close to the self-pour taps. Behind the bar, you could be feet away from those taps. You might not even notice if they're a little dirty, but you're certainly going to notice if the self-pour taps are dirty. So that's even more reason to keep those clean. The analogy I was talking about the other day is, I'm guilty of this. If I'm having people over, I'm going to make sure my living room and my kitchen are spotless.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep my bedroom door shut, because it's not going to be as clean, because I know people aren't going to go in there except me. So compared to back of house taps, where just the bartenders are seeing them, really, people are extra careful to keep their self-pour taps clean, because those are the taps that their customers see and interact with.
Yep.
And then this one's not as popular. We hear it sometimes, but it's that self-pour systems do not promote responsible drinking. If that was true, Jeff would have never been able to get self-pour legalized by any of the alcohol departments that he presented the concept to. In most states, we already talked about the dispense limit briefly, but 13 ounces of beer is the most you can purchase at one time. So with the
32.
What did I say?
13.
Oh, sorry, 32. Every 32 ounces of customer sobriety must be checked before they continue drinking. That's why we developed a dispense limit associated with each RFID card. So every 32 ounces of beer that a customer pours, their RFID card will deactivate. To have their card reactivated with another 32 ounces, they must see a member of staff. That staff member will quickly assess their sobriety. Assuming that the customer can responsibly consume another 32 ounces, the staff member can reactivate their card with a click of the button. And for higher ABV beverages like wine or cocktails, or maybe even some, heavier IPAs or stouts, a consumption multiplier can be applied to those taps. If that multiplier was 2, for example, if they poured 16 ounces of a high ABV beverage, their dispense limit would be reached and that card would deactivate, because 16 times 2 is 32. A customer's RFID card can also be deactivated at any time if they begin causing problems. It's much easier to just cut somebody off with a click of the button, rather than having to address them directly, have a verbal altercation, try to wrestle a beer out of their hand. Just much easier. Just click of a button, boom, they're done. Their card doesn't work. They can't drink anymore.
And you now have a list on our system, at least, you have a list of all of the open tabs and the amount dispensed for everyone, and their spend as well. So at a glance, you can look and see if people are getting close to hitting that dispense limit and maybe should be cut off, or you have visibility into who is drinking what, when, and where with our self-pour technology.
Yeah, and then this is just a quick video of somebody hitting that dispense limit on our demo system. They get a message on screen. When they see that message, they know it's time to go see a member of staff, get their card reactivated. And then we do have one more slide, and then we'll see if we have any questions after that. But, one misconception is that self-pour technology is only for large tap walls and maybe for only, new construction breweries. But that's not the case. We're doing more and more direct draw systems, whether it's a kegerator that's more permanently installed or whether it's a mobile kegerator that can be moved around a venue. For these direct draw systems, they're great because they don't involve a lot of construction. All we need is a space to put it, and then power and data to be able to install it. The mobile systems are great because if you're a larger venue where you only have one bar and you have a lot of other space, you can have these mobile units to move to areas remote from the bar that may be further away from the bar. You might have some private event areas that you can wheel these mobile kegerators into. Or maybe you just want a smaller system that's only going to feature maybe your seasonal beers or some of your best sellers or some of your new releases. Again, we believe that customers should have the freedom to choose their own experience. So we do have a lot of customers that implement both a regular bar and a self-pour bar. And sometimes that self-pour system comes after they're already open. So if somebody does want to pour their own beer very quickly, they can, or if they do want to sit at that traditional bar, they can. And another type of system we're doing more and more of, especially recently, are mobile tap trailers. And for brewery owners, these are an awesome opportunity to bring your brand on the road. You might have one location. You might be exploring opening a brick and mortar in some new markets. With one of these trailers, you can test those markets before opening a brick and mortar, or you might just decide, hey, why pigeon-toe myself into one market when I can hit several different markets throughout the course of a year. So the tap trailers are great for that. The tap trailers can also be a great addition to an outdoor beer garden when you're not taking the trailers on the road.
And you can use them for beer festivals and events, and just anywhere to take your brand on the road and promote your brand. And like I said, I believe that if customers are having a different, memorable experience with your brand via, for example, a self-pour trailer, that's going to resonate with them forever, and they're going to talk about it, and they're going to tell their friends about it, and I think ultimately will have a great impact on your brand and raise awareness. And obviously the last one is the tap at the table, where it all started. These I've seen in sports bars. They're very popular. A lot of people don't even want to get up to have to go pour their own beer. They just want to sit at the table and pour their own beverages. You can turn that into kind of like a VIP experience at a tap room, where you might have, maybe a special barrel aged beer or something unique on tap, only available at the table. And you can then, have reservations for the table and, provide a little bit different experience with a tap at the table.
And more breweries and tap rooms are doing brunch. And I think one of the coolest table tap systems we've seen is that champagne tap. So you could have a champagne tap at a table, and then you could just bring your guests a ton of different juices that they can mix with their freshly poured champagne.
Different types of mimosas.
That's a really cool one we've seen. But yeah, I think that concludes all the different misconceptions that we wanted to debunk. So we'll stop sharing and just see if there's any comments. We do see that there's a few. Amanda, if you're listening, here we go. Nope, I think those are all just notifications. So I don't think we have any questions. I'm not sure if our contact info got dropped in there. If it hasn't, we'll be sure to make sure it's included in the show notes. Oh, it has been dropped. Awesome. So thank you, everybody, for your time and for tuning in. Hopefully it was insightful. If you did have some negative opinions about self-pour, we hope to maybe have changed those in a positive direction. And we're looking forward to continuing to be a part of Craft Beer Professionals and contributing to the group and providing some content for you guys.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for having us.